All right. Welcome back to the House of Wolves podcast. This is your host, Deontay, with my friends Jalen and Josh. We got a few topics for you guys today. Kind of you know, sparse this all together real quick because we really didn't have much to talk about. As 2020 is coming to an end, but it definitely did not. It definitely didn't leave with no impact. I would say that 2020 has been one of the weirdest years of my life, hands down.
Best year ever.
The best year ever. I get, yeah, yeah. Let's say that. Um, but yeah, we're going to be talking about a few topics here. I have a little bit of time, but first, before we start, how you guys doing?
Good. A couple days to New Year, and what we talked about before, we got things coming up in the new year. Hopefully, things get back to more normal. So people get back to work.
Oh yeah,
People, start feeling better if they've been sick or lost people. So
yeah.
hopefully, things improve.
They can't get any worse, I would hope, but you know,
Yeah.
let
Man,
don't let God tell you like, boy, you better.
yeah, they talking about a new strain and stuff. I'm looking like, man, come on, quit playing, man. I just want to hope. Nah, just fine. But nah, shoot. Yeah, like Josh said, hopefully, people start like feeling better and a lot of this COVID stuff died now. But I mean, everything for me, I mean, it's been smooth. I ain't really did a whole lot. I mean, I'm blessed to see another Christmas, be around some of my family, stuff like that. So that's pretty smooth. I don't feel like you can ever go wrong with that. Um, but
No.
time just been flying for me and stuff like that with all this like school stuff. So I didn't really get to prepare for the holidays like I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel a little like empty in that regard. But everything else fine. Good to be on here with my boys. Can't go wrong with that either.
Right. We ain't talked in a while, but yeah, we always come back. Yeah.
Man, y'all acting different. Y'all got y'all Xboxes and
Yeah,
forgot about the players, man.
whatever. Yeah. But yeah, Christmas was good for me. I just spent it with my wife, and we did a Zoom call for the family, and we kind of played some Christmas games on there. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was on there for like 4 hours, but it was a lot of fun. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad. But what we is with the meat and potatoes of this. Well, I guess the first thing we kind of want to talk about with you guys is the greatest games or series. I don't know which one to start with. The greatest series, then game, but some of the greatest series and games of all time that kind of shaped what we like in games and what we see and what we tend to gravitate more towards to in our opinions. It doesn't necessarily the greatest of all time. It can be that because most of the time the greatest of all time is held for a higher tier of video gaming, but and that could overlap, but really it's just what we think is something that was substantial enough to make our list and things like that. So I can start off with one, and then we kind of just go around and kind of discuss that game in that particular series if y'all have any input really. But
Yeah.
one of mine's, and it's one of the newer ones, but obviously it did not start this type of genre. I think it just elevated it to something more special. But it didn't necessarily compel me in regards to like story, but with atmosphere and sound quality and just the quality of the game itself, I think it elevated the genre to a new light. And I think it did just a little bit better. Don't kill me for this. Just a little bit better when it comes to
Warframe.
this type of gameplay. No,
Man, he finna say
I'm
some bull.
talking about Dead Space versus Resident Evil. Like Resident
Uh,
Evil 4, Resident Evil versus Dead Space. Like I can't compare the other
yeah.
ones because they were different types of games, but they were similar in genre. But Resident
Hmm.
Evil 4 came before Dead Space, but Resident Evil 4 did not in my opinion Dead Space is the better quality series, just because it has the two. It's just because it has 1, 2, and 3. I think 1 and 2 really succeeded in capturing a that atmosphere of being alone in space and just being walking the ship just stranded. And 3 obviously was a little misstep, but we don't talk about that one. And then versus Resident Evil 4. Because I don't really want to give, because Resident Evil series overall is better in my opinion, just overall everything that has come from that series. But I feel like comparing Dead Space 2, Dead Space and Resident Evil 4, Dead Space did a lot more to create an atmosphere than I think Resident Evil 4 did, even though they both were very high in regards, in my opinion. They both really was
Yeah.
something I really enjoyed to play. Dead Space just a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree in general. I think Resident Evil has a lot of good games, but it also has a lot of bad games. But
Mm-hmm.
overall, Dead Space, especially those first two games, they had good, like, new and interesting combat,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just say generally good pacing, because
Yeah,
you usually
definitely.
spend most of the time by yourself, um, exploring the ship, and sometimes you have to like backtrack, but overall it feels like you're always progressing and getting stronger, and your enemies are getting stronger like with you,
Yeah.
which I always enjoy. Sometimes the Resident Evil gets like, especially depending on which one you playing, like you're either too strong and you can just blow up everything,
Mm-hmm.
or you really low on ammo and things like that, and that kind of like changes it to more survival, which is just a
Right.
different pace than just a like, I don't want to say action, but like
Yeah.
in Dead Space, you're pretty strong. Like you can kill enemies pretty fast, but
Mm-hmm.
they can kill you fast. So it feels like a more equal balance in that sense.
Right, right, right. I think they nailed the combat, and they nailed the ability to say, okay, you still got to hit your shots well. Yeah, they're not just headshots. You now can take off limbs and slow them down. Where it kind of created a more of a tense element because you were trying to stop this guy from attacking you, and then the guy behind you was coming, and then you also are at a slower pace, and the camera was so tightly, it was so close to you that you really felt like you were being, like you were going down this corridor, and you just didn't have the ability to turn and move fast enough to kind of keep up. So you always felt like you're on your toes there. And then they had things like the some of the enemies that didn't die, and they would just always constantly chase you and follow you, and you had to figure out how to burn them and stuff like that. Obviously, Resident Evil had some of those mechanics previously, but again, I think execution and quality overall was something that Dead Space hit that I didn't see in Resident Evil until come like I would say the first time I seen it was the remake Resident Evil 2. That's the first
Yeah,
time I really saw that type of vision in like the create and that polish that I was looking for. Because Resident Evil 5 didn't have it for me. Resident Evil 4 didn't have it, but they definitely were genre defining games. And don't make me don't lose that in this conversation, because I really do hold them to a high regard just as much as I do Dead Space. I just think Dead Space just a little bit better.
yeah,
You have
Uh,
to be a lot more. I remember, so I didn't play. I'm not a Resident Evil fan. I didn't play Dead Space 1, but I did play Dead Space 2.
mhm,
I remember, obviously, the higher the difficulty, they make stuff more scarce, things like that. But I remember, I felt like when I was playing it, I had to be more like mindful of like what I had to do, and that's what like really drew me to the game, because it wasn't necessarily a puzzle game, but you like,
mhm.
what people liked about the old Resident Evil, they like, well, I need to be cautious about how I kill these dudes. So I want to waste my bullets and kill them now because they might turn into a crimson head. But then I'm gonna have to face them later on, and
Mm,
I might not have that many. I'm gonna have better guns, but at the same time, this not the area where I want to fight them at. And you know what I'm saying? So it's just stuff like that.
mhm.
Like picking and choose your battles. Obviously, Dead Space 2 is a little bit more on the offensive because you can change your weapons and stuff like that. But that plasma cutter, boy, chop chop.
yeah.
They finna chop chop.
Yeah, man. Line gun, plasma color. That it was just a lot of very because it felt like you were just using stuff in the environment, and you was picking up stuff. You wasn't picking up real guns necessarily. You was just picking up stuff in the environment to try to survive. And that plasma cutter was going crazy. I mean, it was basically meant for a surgical tool, but you were using it as something else. And I just felt like that world was built a lot more. Well, it just engulfed you in that world where you kind of felt like, again, you're trying to make your way through it and you're trying to survive, really, and you just felt alone. And it was so good at selling that and making you feel that way that it elevated how scary it was. And I remember playing that game, and I had to stop for a little bit because I was like, man, this is creeping me out. And I used to have with headphones on, and I
Oh
was
yeah.
I was pretty young when I was playing that game, and I was like, okay, I can't play this with headphones on because it's creeping me out. So I took the headphones on. That's where I really started to pay attention. It made me pay attention to sound because I never paid attention to sound. Like I was
Boy.
literally having to wait and hear where people were coming from because I was like, where's this guy at? He's on top of me, and it was like it made me pay
Yeah.
attention to sound so much more than any other game. I felt like because they give you a cue on screen, but really, Dead Space said, forget all that hue, forget all those icons. We ain't giving you nothing but a health bar and your ammo counter, and you got to
Yeah,
figure out the
that's what I
rest
really
out.
liked about it.
Yeah,
Especially like you said with sound, because in two they made that enemy that like hide from you,
yeah,
and he'll like charge you, but he'll run away and hide somewhere,
yeah,
and you don't know where yet. So it
yeah.
would just makes you more aware. And
Hmm.
I've always liked with Dead Space that they tried to make the enemies I guess they weren't really smart, but they would do things to like switch up your behavior. Like
Yeah.
um, they'll jump into a vent and
Hmm.
then they'll come out in a different place. So it
Hmm.
made you have to be like more aware of the entire room that you're in.
Yeah.
Whereas like games like Resident Evil, it's more like memorization. Like it's always three enemies in this room and they're gonna attack you, but
Yeah.
they don't really interact with the world in an interesting way to make you feel like you're being followed. I guess.
Right. Yeah. I think it. I
Yeah,
like. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
not my bad. Nah, I was just about to say I remember playing Dead Space too. Like I don't know how you just put the headphones on. I had to make sure it's daylight. I'm looking like, man, I remember hearing them babies crying. I'm looking like, man, what's going on this shit, bro? Everybody dead. Next thing you know, I forgot what the babies did. It's been like 10 years since I played it, but it was they
Oh, they
had them
blow up.
necro.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
okay, they did, boy. Okay, that's what I thought. They had them necromorph babies, and it was blowing up. And I remember hearing like a nursery song or something like that. I'm looking
Hmm.
like, man, I don't even
Dog.
want to go through
They
here, but you
elevated
gotta
the
go through.
scary, bro. I mean, you don't want to forget about Silent Hill and all they did too. Cause I used to enjoy to mess out these games. Like this is what I used to play, and I was like, I don't know what was wrong with me. I used to play all those types of games, and I used to play Silent Hill a lot, and I remember playing those types of games, and they were so creepy. Silent Hill uh made me feel the most. I would say it made me feel like I shouldn't be playing this game, or made me feel like it was like demon. it had a
It
good way of
was.
it had a good way of showing that it was very demonic, and like all the little lore and all the stuff that you will pick up and read, and all the stories you'll kind of unveil by just looking at the world and paying attention to like the clues. And yeah, man, Silent Hill made it feel like you can literally go to this place. Dead Space, it didn't make me feel that way, but it made sure that if I was ever in that situation, this is how it would be. Versus, Silent Hill was very good at, I guess what you call environment storytelling. In my opinion, I call it environmental storytelling. With like when you was going through the hospitals and you'll see all the dead patients and you'll see stuff like that happening, and you just kind of try to put stuff together in your mind like what happened here. So obviously they
Yeah.
weren't graphically capable of showing it in a meaningful way, which I'm really looking forward to a Silent Hill remake. But it was, you could still pick up on that with the stuff that was happening, the stuff you were reading, and the stuff you were going through to get to the end. So all these games are like some of my favorites, but definitely Dead Space kind of it stuck with me the most, just because of how fun it was to play as well as how scary it was.
Yeah, I ain't never like them scary games, so I ain't got a whole lot of experience. But Dead Space, when I seen my brother playing, I'm like, all right, this game, I
Hmm.
want to challenge myself, but it give me a healthy. You you don't feel helpless on there, but you feel like oh, it gave you that balance of like feeling helpless and
Hmm.
like not and like horror and stuff like that, but not feeling
Yeah.
too helpless or like too horrific. Because I heard the first one was scarier than the second one, so
Well, the odds are against you, but you always feel like you have some way to fight
Hmm.
back. Um, Whereas
Like,
like the reason I didn't like the older like Resident Evil games or like Silent Hill is you're on purpose they make you like move slow or turn slow or you can't shoot well because they want you to feel like you can't fight back.
hmm.
Um, in which you can like get good at the game and learn how to play the game regardless of that. But it's nice for Dead Space because once you get that plasma cutter, you're good to go. You just gotta learn how to protect yourself.
Yeah,
yeah,
and then you get your abilities where you can like grab stuff and shoot it at them, or
Oh
you
yeah,
can
yeah,
pull their
freeze them
limbs
and
off
stuff.
and shoot it back at them. Then you get the stasis effect where you can, pause them, and if they chasing you down, like all that stuff made me feel like crap. I am at my, I'm at the end of the ropes here, people. I gotta go, and I'm trying to slow stuff down and get through stuff, and yeah, it just stuck with me a lot more because of all of that stuff that they kind of put in the game that made me feel like, is this a? It's like it felt like it's just like an evolution versus a reiteration of what was already coming. It was like an evolution of that type of gameplay for me, at least
Yeah.
because it didn't. And then I started seeing stuff like come after it. I mean, Evil Within, not really. It was kind of trying to mimic Resident Evil 4, but there were other games that kind of had that feeling of stasis and that space. I think Prey kind of had a very
Um,
similar feel to it, and it
yeah,
was
I
first
started Prey
person.
recently, and it feels
Hmm.
kind of not as good as like
Hmm.
Dead Space, but it's in that similar vein where you have more abilities to like
Yeah,
protect yourself and things like that.
correct. Yeah, yeah. So, um, yeah. I mean, again, though that's one of the games for me at least. But we can
Yeah.
move over to one of you guys. Is
You
whichever
want to
one you.
go, Taylor, or you want me to go? What's
shoot,
my
you can
favorite
go.
take?
It
All right.
don't really
Um,
matter, man. Don't say Warframe, man. Please, I beg of thee.
no, it's not on my. I told you it's not on my all-time favorite list. I just said that it was for that last generation. It was one that stood out.
Yeah.
All time favorite for me, number one is always Metroid Prime,
Oh.
and it's a weirder one because it came out like I think it came out before Halo One, and what that game did in that time, a lot of other I guess first person games or first person shooters try to do it, but they haven't got there, and it's
Mhm.
mainly like the environment, the storytelling, and the like just immersion because it was one of those first games that like when you go outside and it's raining and the rain is on your helmet, and since it's a first person game you can see the rain like going down
The visor and
on the
stuff.
helmet,
Uh-huh.
on the visor, yeah. And plus at that time it was looks graphically good. It's probably one of Nintendo's best looking games
Hmm.
of the generation because they were trying to keep up with graphics, and so it looked as good as something like Halo.
Gotcha.
Um, uh, but overall, Metroid always has a simple formula, same as like Zelda.
Hmm.
Explore the world, find upgrades, go back to places that you couldn't go to before, and fight bosses. But it just had really good pacing.
Hmm.
Again, like I said, with Dead Space, you feel like you can protect yourself, but there are enemies and things like that that can um, hurt you a lot. And the
Hmm.
main thing, like Metroids, like y'all probably, I don't know if y'all actually know, but Metroids are like these little jellyfish looking things. And so they'll jump on you. And since it's first person, like you actually see them on the visor and things like that. So just really good at immersion. Um,
Oh.
Metro Prime 2 and 3, they're still good, not as like original or like revolutionary as the first game. But
Hmm.
overall, the Metroid Prime series is really good. And just Nintendo for some reason never cared to go back to it,
Do you
even though all three games sold well and they were all critically acclaimed. So
do you feel like the switch to well, I guess what do you feel like the 3D switch in Prime did for the genre itself, like those Metroid games?
well, you played Hollow Knight, and so
Yes.
the the 2D Metroid games are the same style of game, like pretty much exactly the same.
Hmm.
And 3D, the difference is there was never a game like that done in 3D, and Metroid Prime did it, I would say, perfectly. So like, how to explain it? Because like in Hollow Knight, you don't mind going back and forth to areas that you've been to because
Right.
you got new upgrades and you want to explore and find things out. But in like 3D games, you feel like sometimes um, it's a waste of time or whatever. But I guess just the way that the world was built,
Hmm.
how to explain it? Every hub or every area had like 10 entrances. So you can leave one and enter another one that you didn't even know was connected there. And so it always felt good to explore
Gotcha.
because you were always rewarded with shortcuts to get to these different places that you liked.
Okay.
And the thing that I mentioned before is the story is mostly kind of told through text, but um, the immersion factors they make you scan the environment to like learn about it. So if you don't know how to open a door, you have to scan it and it gives you information about it and you have to use that to like,
Figure out how to open it.
find other things to open it. So it's just really good at getting you into the world. Um the closest game I would say that has a similar world design is like Dark Souls where you can, got shortcuts or Bloodborne. But Metroid just did it first, like the first like 3D game to do that well.
Hmm. Okay. Um.
Um
Oh,
yeah.
go. I was finna ask. So because Metroid came out in you said 2000s or so.
Yeah, it was like 2000, 2001, I think. Let me see.
Have you seen some of elements from Metroid Prime that was introduced there that you've seen elsewhere? Like how influential do you feel like that game was to that genre of style of game, or like?
Well, to the overall genre, I would say not as much because um, it's not really a first person shooter. Like
Hmm.
obviously it's first person and you shoot, but um, it's not about like Halo where like you can run out of ammo and miss shots and things like that.
Hmm.
The challenge is not in shooting; it's more about exploring.
Gotcha.
So Halo and things like that, they grew to like define like the first person genre or something like that. But Metroid, there are specific things that they do that everybody else uses because it's just so good.
Hmm.
So like the world design and the shortcuts, like Dark Souls uses it, Doom uses it. Um, the like the double jumping and like grappling to different objects in the environment, like Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal copies those things.
Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, I would say like maybe games have evolved past the point where like Metroid is the only influence, but I still see like, oh, they got this idea from there or stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Like when I played Recore, I
Hmm.
told you some of the people that worked on it used to work at Retro, but the locking onto an enemy and being able to jump around and shoot at the same time while you stay locked on, like that is specifically a Metroid thing.
Gotcha. Okay. No, and no, I agree. I never played the Metroid Prime series. I definitely played Metroid, and pretty much every time I like hear someone talking about those 2D platformers or something like that, where you're exploring multiple play layouts and you're kind of coming back to things. They always talk about Metroid, Castlevania style games. So I understand that they were influential there. I just wanted to see what Prime really did to kind of not only elevate what they already had accomplished on their 2D games, but what they also influenced after, um, which is really, I guess, that what really brings together that generational or greatest of all time type feel, because then they kind of expand on that and they kind of make everything like Grand Theft Auto 3, like that type of game
Mm-hmm.
where everything else after it was kind of similar, because this is where they started to introduce open worlds where you could walk around freeform, and it felt like, refreshing to kind of be able to be in a 3D land like that. And that was the power of
Yeah.
PlayStation 2 bringing that forward. So it's kind of that type of, innovation and like greatest of all time. And that's a series there. But um, no, I can see Metroid. I can see Metroid doing that from their previous series. Prime, I honestly I haven't played it, so I can't judge it off of what it's done or what it's influenced as much
Yeah.
as you can, because you
I would
probably
say
see it.
the closest thing, even though it's of course different, but the new Doom games feel like a evolution of what Metroid Prime did, just in a more modern time, since
Gotcha,
Nintendo isn't doing it.
gotcha. Okay. Um,
Man. So we finna ignore Federation Team or Federation Force or whatever that junk called, man.
Federation Force.
Again,
Is that Metroid you
Nintendo
talking
doesn't
about?
care about Metroid, so Federation Force was terrible for a bunch of reasons, but mainly because they didn't care enough about the game to actually give it the effort that it deserved.
Did you so how did you like experience the game? Did you like see YouTube videos, just read about it, you actually played it? Like what
I played a little bit of it,
so you
honestly,
copped
just
it.
like an hour. No, well, I think I did used. I think I didn't buy it full price. um, but it's similar. The main thing is it's like it's not a single player game. Like it's a 4 player like co-op type game, and you go on like mini missions, and the graphics are chibi, and just like it just didn't feel like a worthy game after it's been like 6 years with no Metroid games.
No, I feel it. I remember I forgot how that mode was demonstrated. I remember you were sick. I think we was roommates at the time too. That junk was funny, man. But
Yeah. Because I mean, like I said, Metroid Prime came out the same time as Halo, and if Nintendo gave it the same effort, it could be as, popular as that. But they just don't care about it, so it's what it is. Like they
Yeah.
haven't even re-released the thing on the Switch, so we'll see.
is they didn't say anything about a new Metroid game at all, right?
Well, they announced Metroid Prime 4 in like 2015, I think. But that game not coming out soon because they keep like every couple months you see in the news like we're hiring a new boss designer. Like the game been in development 5 years. Why are you hiring a boss designer?
It's in development hell, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it sounded like.
because I think that if they gave it to somebody like called up it and they made Doom, or they call up somebody who's good at making games already and have them do it, then they can make a good game. But I feel like Nintendo is trying to like, oh, we want Miyamoto to direct it, and we want the Zelda people to do this, and we want this. Like, y'all don't know what y'all doing, so just give it to somebody who experienced.
No, that definitely makes sense. They
That
them your
that
boys, man, they hard headed.
that ain't Nintendo's way. They like, no, we can do it ourselves. We got this. We need to keep all that in house.
Yeah, they
Keep
want
it.
to keep it in house,
Yeah. So I mean, I get
and
that,
they
but
just ain't got the. I mean, they got talent, but they don't have the cutting edge people that we
mhm,
made Uncharted, so we know what is best for this genre. So
right.
yeah,
So they're not. It's like trying to make these types of games with no understanding of it. I mean we've seen people pull it off. I mean, you look at Respawn. They was able to make a third person action
well,
game,
yeah, yeah,
and it was pretty successful. And they were mostly shooters, first person shooters. So I mean, we could see it happening, but you never know. Hopefully they pull something together. Definitely.
hopefully the people making Mario Party and Mario RPG games don't mess with it.
You talking about
Yeah.
those Paper
I think we
Mario's?
Paper
man,
Mario.
Origami Stars, Sticker Star, Boo Boo
You
Mario.
still ain't get it a chance, Jalen.
Man, what? You think I'm finna get that game a chance?
You ain't bought like the
Nintendo
last
ain't
4 games, right?
Right, you might as well give it
man,
a chance.
bro. You telling me you want me to allocate time out of my day, allocate money to Nintendo's quote unquote premium product where they not finna drop the price on that joint? Shit, they got me bent. I can't even do it, bro. Like I played Sticker Star, bro. That game was demoralizing, man. I ain't never felt so hopeless in the game. I'm looking like, man, they gotta be. It's gonna get better, man. I was playing that mug. I'm looking like, so why am I fighting enemies again? Like I'm using resources to fight these dudes, and they literally give me the same resources back, except I'm getting coins. I'm like, man, I ain't playing this game. But I told GameStop take that junk back. Then they told me I can't take games back because I've been returning games too frequently. All right.
Yeah, and that's a weird series because I saw somewhere somebody said that Nintendo a couple years ago that said no, they can't create new characters for Mario. Whatever that series is called, I forgot. Paper Mario. It has to be characters that already exist or non-human characters. That's why the last game has like teacups and plates as characters instead of like Dry Bones Junior.
What?
That's
Yeah,
goofy.
they not they like Disney, bro. They just acting different, man. Like they not the same company, man.
Man, I think they've been the same company. That's the problem. They've been that company since the first came out, and they just can't really change at this point. They're too stuck in their ways. So,
I
I mean,
mean, yeah, but it's just stuff like you would see stuff like remember when they had Street Volume 3 and they had Mario and you know what I'm saying? Like that type of
Yeah,
stuff. Like they don't do that type of stuff no more. Like they be coming out with these kid games or I mean, I'm not saying not kid games, but like they come out with like literal doo-doo water and then charge you $60 for it and be like, yeah, we made a premium game. I'm like, no. Like, I mean, even stuff like Mario Hoops, like, they don't, I don't know what they be working on, bro.
Mario Hoops is tight.
Yeah, Mario 3, man, I used to be going crazy on that DS. Boy, I be tapping that screen to get all them coins. Don't get me started on that.
yeah, I think y'all. Well, I I don't know. I think literally y'all remembering it wrong because I don't feel like they were ever expansive. I think they always stuck to like a certain degree of things, and they like didn't want to expand on those things. That's why they made so many Mario and Sonic,
I think they took
Olympics.
more risks. Like they allowed more crossovers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've always been conservative, but I feel like they're just more super conservative now and just keep getting that way over time.
They definitely, I mean, I could be biased. I felt like like Josh said, they're more conservative than what they were before. Because I mean, last time I checked, the whole Final Fantasy VII, Nintendo and Sony like split type of thing, disc versus cartridge. That little
Mm-hmm.
that split was because of like essentially there's like conservative and stuff like that. But it was like at least on the GameCube, they gave you like little different options. Like you can do the Game Boy thing, plug it up, or you can play Mario Party with the mic and stuff. And then they got to that Wii, and then they started acting a little different. And you was just kind of like, and they started slowing down with some of their games they came out. I mean, think about the Switch now; they ain't got no games on there. The DS, the GameCube, like they came out with way more stuff. Like, and it would be more like less like mainstream stuff, and it would be more
Yeah,
like riskier games, like the
you know the difference? Yeah, on the GameCube, Nintendo made and published a rated M horror game called Eternal Darkness. Nintendo right now is not going to make a rated M horror game.
Oh, okay. See, that's big. That's different too. You know, another thing I noticed when the Wii had came out was that so you know when you usually start a game up, they usually say like the little not the publishers, but like the devs and all that type of stuff. Like you might see Havoc or
Mm-hmm.
Bink or different things like that. Even when the game start up now, is none of that. Like I'm not saying that has anything to do with it, but when I started seeing that like originally with the Wii, um they stopped. It wasn't as many devs seemed like that was influencing the games and things like that. So that's why I started thinking like maybe they just kind of doing things a lot more tight knit or maybe they ain't trying. I don't really know what all that stuff means, but that was like a theory that had crossed my head. I'm like, man, these games starting up fast because usually you cut the game where you got to go through like 3-4 screens with the devs and different things on there. So,
Oh, you saying like
um,
who helped with the game and like who
yeah,
created like oh yeah, I mean
Yeah,
they could be still working with people, but I'm assuming as of now Nintendo wants to keep everything inside of Nintendo.
and they used to
Um,
do that.
maybe I don't know because I really haven't paid close attention to them outside of like Pokemon and that. I mean Pokemon really.
yeah.
Um,
But what's your pick, Jalen? It's a Nintendo game.
Man, you already know.
Pokemon.
Nah, Square Enix fanboy right here.
oh,
Report Square Enix fanboy here. Nah, but I think my favorite series, and it's not my favorite, it's one of my favorite games of all time, and people probably gonna hate me, but it's alright though. I know Josh got my back on it. It's the Final Fantasy series,
oh
but
man.
like I think the one that was just so cold to me was Final Fantasy 13, man. Like aside from
Yeah,
the combat was like the low point was the combat and like how linear the game was. I think the game don't open up until you get to like Grand Pulse on chapter 11, which is
Mm-hmm.
like 60-70% of the way through the game. But like, man, that music, man. Let me tell you about that. I think the Xbox is putting out at I think it's like 1080i or 720p with that HDMI cord, man. With the graphics, boy, I was in a different world playing that game. I remember summer 2010. I was like, yeah, I gotta get up early to get to this Final Fantasy, man. I gotta fight these Eidolons.
yeah.
That
When
game
that
was
game
so
came
lit,
out,
bro.
it was the best game graphically I ever seen, and even going back to it, like it still looks like
Way better
a
than a lot
PlayStation
of
4
games.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it
like
was running good. The resolution it's like blurry kind of, but
yeah.
the
I think it
graphics,
started at 720, and they upscaled it for like if your TV could do it.
yeah, bro, that game. They had the music on there. I remember going through the Sun with Waterscape, seeing them. I was out of Grand Post, seeing them Behemoth Kings and stuff. I'm like, yeah, we finna go hook y'all up real
was this
quick.
the game right after 10 or no?
uh, nah, this is the first.
No, 12 was on the PlayStation 2, but 13 was the first one for the like
Three
360 and
three
PS3.
okay, so that's why it was so
Yeah,
expensive. I was wondering like what caused it to be that way, but I'm assuming graphical power, baby. But yeah,
but
this
it ran
game
Yeah,
good though. That's the crazy thing about it. Like it wasn't no like hiccups like the game. It wasn't scratchiness. Like I noticed with like 10, 13, 2 and Lightning Returns,
mhm.
it got more
they had
scratchy.
like frame rate issues and things like that.
Yeah, but
Uh,
it was
13 didn't. Yeah,
yeah. 13 was. I'm trying to tell you, like aside from the combat people don't like it because it's not as tactical. Like you can't do as much. You got the paradigm shift and stuff. But when all that stuff used to be going on, casting an arrow gun, and they had water gun, and I'm like the Lightning's Army of One, and I'm like, man, this game tight. Like that game, bro. I literally put it like I probably put it close to 100 hours on that game, bro. I remember I'm like, I'm finna go fight this adamant toys. I know I got a 5% drop to get the I think what you need an adamant tight to get your ultimate weapon.
yeah,
Omega weapon for lightning, man, that game was that game was it was so tight because of the music. The music was so submersive. Like Square Enix always do good with their music and stuff, man. But that 13 music, like the battle music and stuff like that, I never got tired of any of the music in the game. I remember when you fought Barthandalus, man, they had that godly music playing because he was talking about like
yeah.
we finna judge y'all and all this type of stuff, dude. Like he's just like y'all post see and y'all ain't finna do this and that. I'm just like, man,
I
can we
think it's
stop
because
this, dude?
I don't know if it was the first one. I feel like it was the first one that they had like an orchestra do the music. Because on the older games, like they had like people make music every now and then. They might have like a one that features an orchestra. For 13, I feel like the whole soundtrack is like just a big orchestra doing all the music all the time.
It had to be because they did their thing with that music, man. I still got that soundtrack on my computer back from 2011 or 12 or whatever, dude. Because they was man that music it just built it built the ambiance real well, man. Like
Yeah,
it was
No, I played
yeah
like the first like 2 hours, and then I stopped. I was playing on the Xbox One X, which it looked really good on there too. And I was like, dang, this game look like when this game come out? Because I was trying to figure it out. I was like, this
Right.
game look good for some reason. And then
I feel
Digital
like
Foundry did their thing on it, and I was like, okay, yeah. So I'm not tripping. The game look is
from like
just
2000 to
yeah,
like 2009, Square Enix was like the best at graphics. Like
yeah.
they always had the best looking games. And 13 was the last Square Enix game that came out and it was the best looking at the time. Like 15 looks good, but it doesn't look anywhere as good as the other games that came out that year.
Hmm.
Um I mean even Final Fantasy 7 like remake it looks good, but there are way better looking games. But 13 when it came out, there was no game touching it.
Yeah, that game was amazing,
They
bro.
must
I was
they
just
made
like,
they made some deals with the lords or something, man. I don't know how they was doing
man,
that.
Yeah.
they sold. That's where they said after you make this game, you know what's gonna happen for the rest of y'all games, right? They ain't they was like, man, we'll worry about that when the time comes. 15 come out, we like, well, I mean, it do kind of look like Assassin's Creed. Nah, that's not ugly. Assassin's Creed ugly too. You ain't seen Unity, you know. But yeah, man, it was that game. And then, of course, I didn't play Final Fantasy 7. I played the remake Cold Work. We ain't even gonna get
Yeah.
started on that. And then I played 10. I actually like 10 a lot. Like 10 had a good story. Not to say 13 didn't have a good story, but 10 had like a real good story. Is real interesting. That game had good music too. Like it just got some iconical music. Like if they, I recognize them like anywhere, stuff like that. But man, when I tell you 13, man, 13.
Yeah. Um,
So
there are better Final Fantasy games, but that one, like Jalen said at that time, was like amazing. I thought it was amazing when it came out. Um,
And the
so
music, you still listen to the music, don't you, Josh?
yeah, I got it on my phone.
See that that music, man.
so what do you guys feel like? Because I mean, I'm assuming that you don't feel like 13. Do you feel like 13 for that time, or encompass the like isolate every last one of them? Do you feel like 13 had the most impact out of all of the games from Final Fantasy, or what do you feel like would be the most impactful of all of the games?
When you say impactful,
Uh,
Like it
are you saying?
changed how people wanted to see games played in the future. It had such a strong presence in like the gaming community. So I'm talking about like Grand Theft Auto 3 changing how we kind of played open world games. We switched from 2D to 3D. And I'm talking about how we like went from Resident Evil 4, how it defined how games should look and how horror games can be played from a third person point of view. Those types of situations where it changes and like elevates the genre.
I would say for Final Fantasy, it set the bar for how they do music because Final Fantasy 14 has really good music, and it's I would say not not the same style of music, but that orchestra and like how they approach it
Mm-hmm.
is was improved since 13. But I just think overall presentation wise, it was the best example of like cutscenes and graphics for a JRPG,
Now,
and it
which one
even
is that?
ran.
You talking about Final Fantasy 13?
Yeah, 13. Like
Okay.
it set the bar for how JRPGs look graphically and how they perform. Like Jalen was saying, in the combat, like you can throw like a whole bunch of explosions on the screen and the game still runs well.
Mm.
And I think that even Final Fantasy hasn't reached that bar in some cases. But 13 did it the best during that time. Now, I wasn't uh, alive when Final Fantasy 7 came out, so I don't know what impact it had the day
Mm.
it came out. It's still a fun game. I just think that since I've seen like the last 6 Final Fantasy games come out, that one was the one I felt was the set the bar for a next gen Final Fantasy game.
Yeah, okay. So where we can like really start to 12 into it because we don't know what happened before that, but yeah, I guess you're right there because we don't know. But um,
Yeah, I say it ain't do nothing. That's like you said, like change the dynamics of Final Fantasy. Because a lot of people actually didn't like it because of the combat. They felt like it was real shallow. Shallow is like a lot of auto battle.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really change it until like when you're doing like some of the extra missions type of stuff. So you
Mm-hmm.
can get away with auto battle. The biggest thing of the game was switching your roles at the right time and having your roles set up. Because I feel like it was some battles where you couldn't beat if you didn't have your 6 paradigms. If you didn't, if you, because you can choose your roles for each of your players. So you got 3 dudes, or I think it's not 3. You choose 3 roles for 3 people, but
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't manually choose them. You had to set them up. So if I want role A for the person one, role B for person two, and role uh, B for person three, that could mess me up if I ain't got the right roles because I might need to be able to heal faster or something to survive this ultimate attack, but I ain't got enough healers. So it's just stuff like that. But like Josh said, I think it really set the bar for the music. I haven't really played Final Fantasy 14, but they got some pretty good music, and you can hear the orchestra. Um, all the other Final Fantasies though, like anything after 13, I haven't heard any like spectacular music where I felt like they put their foot in that music. Um, and of course, it's not the best Final Fantasy ever, but to me, it gave the best experience because that seamless, like I used to see cutscenes. You got cutscene graphics or animations, you want to call it, and then you got actual in-game graphics. That's how I separate them. And Final Fantasy 13, it wasn't no difference. Like they used to literally come out the cutscene, and then they just zoom into your character back, and then you just start walking around. Like it was all seamless.
Mm-hmm. No. Okay. Well, I mean, that can still be, I guess, what you can consider change, like changing for even like the, I guess I don't know. I guess because polish is different than actual redefining or changing how something works. Um, I mean, it did attempt to. It made it more accessible to most because if it didn't create this auto like function battle system, maybe people wouldn't have been, able to jump into RPGs lights and see what that genre can bring to the table. And then it kind of, I think after this 13, it feels like a lot of the other ones started to become less and less more, became less and less more JRPGs and more JRPG lights, where it felt like they were trying to adjust how the game was played, at least in the Final Fantasy realm, not in everything else. Everybody else felt like they was kind of still trying to do the same thing, or they were trying to capture something that Final Fantasy already did. Whether they went with the new program or the old program, it was still all Final Fantasy. So I did feel like it still had an impact because um, the games I've played recently that was JRPGs, I'm not sure if Persona came after Final Fantasy or not, but Persona feels like something that was very mimicking to Pokemon, but then it kind of feels like, Persona also dwelled into other things that kind of created their own flavor of what a JRPG is. And then there was other games that came after that I played. Something recent I played that was a JRPG. It was, dang, I don't remember. I know it wasn't Bravely Default to Square Enix, so I'm assuming they're gonna have some type of similarities. But there was another game I played recently that was a JRPG. Now I can't remember it.
Was it Xenoblade?
Yes, Xenoblade. Xenoblade felt like it took on some similarities of that auto battle stuff, and you kind of switching and changing your stuff as you go. But it had an impact. It felt like
Mm-hmm.
the impact was felt because of something that Final Fantasy did with their systems. So.
Yeah. Every Final Fantasy game, they wanted it to be completely different from the other ones, so a new battle system and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know people don't like the battle system in 13, but the auto battle was new at that time, so people felt it was like too easy.
Mm-hmm.
But that auto battle did add to just the complexity that you can do in a battle system, so that you don't got to worry about just keep tapping attack, attack, attack.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to attack, and now you can look at the other things and be in control of your whole party at the same time,
Right.
in in real time instead of it being like turn based. So I mean, it's a different style of game. It's preference. Like some people are just gonna prefer like an action RPG like Final Fantasy VII.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was at that time still very innovative with their battle system, with what they were doing.
Okay. Like I remember Child of Light. I was playing that, and it felt very similar and
You
different.
got another game, Deontay?
Me? Uh, y'all can hear me, right?
Or
Okay.
some?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, hmm. I would say, I mean, the other game I was thinking of before you guys even started talking was still the GTA series, but I feel like that's a given. I mean, it's the GTA series. Obviously, everything came after that was really, um, it felt like to me after
Mediocre.
GTA 3, it felt like everything just after that was like a guided by this game, and it felt like people anybody that wanted to delve into telling a drug story or a criminal story that in an open world, they just ripped a lot of stuff from the GTA series. So
Yeah.
Rockstar really did a really good job of creating that, and then everything after that being like giving them a guiding light of what to do and how to create it. People probably were already trying to create this, but just because Grand Theft Auto 3 was the one that did it on a significant scale, and they did it with an open world, and they brought this where you can just travel and go places, and you didn't have to really worry about, being hit by an invisible wall, or like being like not being able to go left, right, up, and down. It was kind of like you could do anything in there. And I don't know if they introduced helicopters in Grand Theft Auto 3. I think they introduced those in Grand Theft Auto Vice City, but I'm not sure.
So you
But
feel like 3 did it the best?
I feel like out of all of the Grand Theft Autos, San Andreas was the pinnacle. Uh,
Okay.
it was 3, Vice City, San Andreas, pinnacle. Then it went down with 4 and uh, and 5. In my opinion, I feel like the storytelling got better,
Hmm.
definitely, but the gameplay did not keep going up in the route I thought it was, because I thought it was going to start adding in even more RPG elements, because San Andreas had that. They had elements that you made you feel like, okay, you had to pay attention to this, that, and the third, and then they kind of dropped it, off in the other stuff. They introduced the internet, they introduced this, that. It wasn't as impactful as having a stature person the most, being able to go get haircuts and changing your way you look, and like that's a RPG. And then you to drop all of that and kind of go back to a very tailored back approach to that, made it seem as if it wasn't the pinnacle no more. It wasn't going up, it was going down.
Hmm.
They did it was graphically impressive, but that's not what I'm looking for. That's how I'm more so interested in the gameplay, because I got used to doing stuff in San Andreas that just wasn't in Grand Theft Auto 4, and yeah. So I think San Andreas had the best. It was at the pinnacle. It had a decent story. It had funny moments. It had a gang system. It had territory takeovers. You had to protect territories. It had so many different elements, like Dynasty Warrior elements. It had a bunch of stuff that you felt like this should be in this type of game, but it was, and um, that's why I felt like it was a strong game. And that was the first time we really saw a black lead character, and that's been very impactful to me. Even though he was a terrible person and he was doing
Hmm.
crime, but it was still a black lead in a game, and they tried to incorporate that into a game, and I never seen it
Yeah.
happen again. But well, not in a meaningful way, at least. Uh, and now that was, in my opinion, the pinnacle, and everything else, was a was was just trying to copy that, and like true crime, Watch Dogs, all of these extra games that came out after, all these games that just felt like they were trying to tell a story, but they weren't innovating at anything really. So yeah, I feel like that game was a generational leap forward, and it kind of rippled effect off to everything else.
Yeah, I would agree. That I played Vice City when it came out and San Andreas after it,
Mm-hmm.
but those games I felt were the best example of just like an open world. Go out, do what you want to do, steal a car, do
Mm-hmm.
missions, fight police, buy cars and things like that. Um, because you had that freedom to do it, and it just felt like the perfect sandbox to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas like when you move on to the other games like 4, like they obviously they tried to improve some things, but they lost a lot of elements in that as well, or it's just not as good.
Mm-hmm.
And 5, like the storytelling I think is way better, and they got better missions, but the world I don't feel is as interesting or like
Mm-hmm.
fun to just explore and just go out and do things in the world. I feel like I'm just going from mission to mission.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think they defined what a open world, like third person open world game is
Yeah.
with those first with 3 and the 2 games after.
Yep. I think they really. I mean, they set the tone. I think, and the tone kind of got misconstrued. I think because of I don't think they'll ever go back to a type of story like they told in San Andreas because it was not only it was controversial in itself because Grand Theft Auto was a controversial game in general, but it was also depicting us in a way that may not have been the best. So when I think about
Yeah.
that game, I'm having chicken spots and all this other stuff. It, yeah, it was messed up, people. We know, but it was still my favorite game of all. It was still one of my favorite Grand Theft Auto games. So I get it, looking at it from like a more seasoned lens now, but at the time, I was just looking for representation, and it felt more inclusive than anything that I played previously. I felt like I was actually not saying I was seeing myself on the screen, but it felt like I was able to create similarities and situations that I would see happen, and it was interesting sandbox to run around in. I'm not gonna be not saying I was running around with RPGs and stuff like that, but it was just that the conversations they were having during their cutscenes and the talk they were talking about and all that stuff. It felt like they tried to at least be inclusive in that one because these were the the iterations of they had the Vice City, they had the Miami, then they had the West Coast and all that was San Andreas, and Grand Theft Auto 3 was the mafia, the Italian mafia and stuff like that. So they were trying to make sure they hit every culture really, and they misrepresented it in every way on each one. But still, it was fun to play at that time, and it was less of a you know, um, I guess woke. I would call it. It was less woke than it is now, but I really
Man,
enjoyed that.
man, get your Hotep helmet, hat on.
Let them know what we saw, how it made me feel. Like, no, San Andreas was just a good game in general. Leave me alone. I'm not finna debate with you about what it did or what it felt like. I was like, no, I didn't care. I wanted to play that game, and I would still go back, and I still play that game to this day. And when the PC got a hold to it with the mods and all that stuff, that was where they really got fun. So I don't care what they talking about at all.
Man,
Was
don't
it a
let
bad
Dr. Umar
influence?
Johnson hear you.
Yes. Was it a fun game? Yes.
Exactly.
Hey, Dr. Umar Johnson gonna hear you, man. He gonna be like, "Black brother, why?"
Letting them appropriate us like that, man, because it was fun. It's like, bro, Grove
Man,
Street, the Ballers, all that junk was hilarious to me, at least. And then they introduced like separate. They introduced like parts of the city because you know how you had the Hollywood city, you had the desert, you had like the Las Vegas portion, you had the like regular, the hood, and then they had like they actually took their time and actually made it feel like you were going different places when you went to these places. So I'm still always going to enjoy it regardless of what anybody say. But I do get it now. Yes, that's why you play games like you mean you have less stories to tell because you don't want to be as you have to be more conscious about what you're saying and how you're presenting people in regards to like stuff like that. So futuristic is the way to go. It never happened before, so can't be in modern times trying to make a story because sometimes it can be depicted wrong. Kind of like Cyberpunk, even though they went to 2077, it's like, yeah, I didn't go far enough. Yeah, I needed to go to 3077, and then people might not be so mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. So, all right. So I guess we can move on from there because it has been about an hour of just talking about our greatest games of all time, which is fine. But I guess one other thing that I wanted to talk about before we kind of wrapped or not before we wrapped, but something I wanted to talk about as well was the Game Awards. I wanted to talk about this after we talked about our greatest games of all time because even though most of the games that we played were like some of the games that I mentioned, they were like eights. Um, Dead Space was like a 8 when it came out. It wasn't a 10 out of 10. Critics didn't enjoy it as much. I don't believe Final Fantasy 13 was met with critical acclaim. San Andreas, I think that was the highest one. I think it got a 9. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Metacritic score is like pretty high. But the point that I'm trying to make is that um, critics don't always get it right. And obviously, the Game Awards is basically solely based off what critics think. Um, so when I was watching it and a lot of stuff was happening, I already could tell that this wasn't what people kind of wanted. This is what the critics wanted. If you're unaware, the Game Awards came on back like a couple weeks ago, and Naughty Dog swept the Game Awards. I think it won 7 awards. It was the highest amount of awards ever won from one game. And yeah, um, what did you guys think watching that? Let's start there.
Like, of course, we're gonna have to preface it and say like we're not hating on the game. Like, I
No.
think that if the game was the best game that came out that year, it should win the game of the year. But it, like you said, it definitely did feel like the committee or critics or whoever were heavily in favor of it in maybe situations that it probably shouldn't have won. Like
Yeah.
the games that it were up against were also really really good, but for Last of Us to sweep all of them unanimously is like it just feels weird.
Yeah.
Because even if it's a good game, I don't think that it's perfect in every way to that point. So it's just weird. Every now and then, like you might see something like God of War go up there and they win like half of all the awards or something. But every now and then, something else might pop up and say like, they just had a better soundtrack or best direction or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So um, yeah, it was just weird to see that single game just sweep through um, like that. You know.
Yeah. I felt like it definitely should have won the accessibility award, innovation and accessibility. I remember seeing that and I was like, yeah, they did a lot to make sure it was accessible to a lot of different people. Um No, I don't feel like it should have won best action slash adventure game. No, I don't feel like it should have won audio design because it. Most of the time, you're not even listening to anything. I feel like Ghost of Tsushima with the wind, the world, definitely should have won that. Um, Narrative, whatever, and you can give it to them. That's totally fine. I'm again because I'm someone that actually liked the game. I just know for a fact it wasn't a great game. It was a okay game. Narratively, graphically, all of it was okay. I wasn't blown away by how Last of Us looked. I wasn't blown away about how the world was perceived and what we were kind of going through with it because it all felt very similar but more polished. I wasn't blown away by this. I wasn't blown away by the audio design because it didn't sound as you know there's this idea of this like I don't know this thing that happens when people are playing these highly acclaimed games and stuff like that. They kind of miss it's like missteps, and they kind of overlook certain things because they feel like if this is something that's particularly more interesting, they don't care about the other thing that's lacking. No, that game does not have any great gameplay to it. The loop is very similar to Uncharted 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, there's literally not much there. You could play Days Gone and feel like you're playing Last of Us. So, I don't see how that beats a game that actually tries to make new gameplay and actually succeeds at that. I think Ghost of Tsushima has far superior gameplay even without a lock on button, even though I hate it, even without a lock on button, it's still vastly better in variety, in fluidity, and impact than uh The Last of Us could ever do. I didn't feel like a samurai. I didn't feel like I was doing anything different than I normally do, but I felt like a samurai when I was playing Ghost. So to see that game get snubbed for best adventure game is kind of ridiculous to me. I
Yeah.
could give you the knock of game of the year because you know Jin was just not a good character in my opinion. He just felt bland. But
Hmm.
I cannot give you game direction because that game was vastly still superior in direction. It had a sense and it had an identity that is stuck to so well that most people that played that game said this is the game that's going to make you feel like a samurai. This is the game that's going to make you feel like you're in uh that feudal Japan or whatever. This is the game. Nobody said that about Last of Us. Nobody cared, bro. Everybody was like, this story, the story, the story. And I can give you narrative. Yes. But to say game direction, no. I cannot give you that. I cannot give you game direction. And not over and then they have Final Fantasy in there as well. And I was kind of like, I haven't beat Final Fantasy, so I don't know if that should have beat over Last of Us. I don't know because it's a remake. I don't know how that game direction would have come into play. I don't know if they made you feel like you were this merc and you were going through this futuristic world. But I know what Ghost did for me, and I know that it was definitely more impactful than it was to play Last of Us. I still go back and play Ghost just to run around and play in the world because it feels realistic, even though it's not the most um, graphically intense game. It's still, it resonated with us so much in its direction, and it stuck to that same direction so well that it didn't matter. It felt like you were in these vastly beautiful places all the time, and you're kind of going through, and you were trying to save your land. And then to see that get snubbed by The Last of Us, that just in my opinion, had no sense of direction most of the time. Um, they brung it together by the end of it, but honestly, the whole point of the game was to understand that revenge is not the answer, but then you have to go down this path of just constantly killing everybody to get back to your revenge, and then say when by the time you get to it, it's not the answer. But you just killed
Yeah.
everybody else, and now everybody else going with revenge. So it makes zero sense. That's not good game direction. Um,
And
where
also, with with the awards, what they do with when they select like games like this is it's also for like not publicity, like they're gonna get paid for it, but um, they want to get that recognition for the choices. And one thing that illustrates that is the best performance
mm-hmm,
category, where they have it's like six nominees. Two of them are from The Last of Us, like Abby and Ellie. It's like the reason that they chose them, like yeah, maybe they do good performances in the game, but you could have chosen one, but they chose two because they know that this is the debate about the game, that people are going to argue about who is better. Whereas you could have looked at, a game that wasn't nominated for performance like Final Fantasy or anything else and chose the best single character from The Last of Us 2 in that
yeah.
category.
I think I'm okay. The reason why I was okay with performance because both Abby and Ellie had to try hard to make this game work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, honestly, they had to try very hard to make it even remotely good. Because if you were just to pull those two actors out of it and just tell a story that this story was supposed to be, it will fall flat even worse than what it did. So in order for this game to even work, I understood the amount of complexity that come into making these actors trying to try hard to make it work. So I wasn't even mad about them both being added, to be honest, because I don't want to say that these characters weren't you know compelling, because they were, because that's why I beat it. I'm saying that the more so the delivery of said characters wasn't great. So Laura and Ashley, these are both Ellie and Abby's, real life characters. I mean actors. I feel like they put in the best performance that they could do with the script they were provided. It
Yeah.
doesn't make me feel like the direction was great. It just makes me feel like the script that they provided, they did the best that they could. Jen did not do a good job with the script that he was providing.
Yeah,
I
no.
never played Hades. Miles Morales felt a little bit too off when I beat it, that to make me feel like he should have got the nod. I'm not sure what other games were out there that made me want to go back and continuously play, because it really wasn't that many high top tier games that came out that was like this character really made me feel a certain way. I'm trying to go back and look at all my games I got now, and nah, none of them. But I mean, I might be missing something. But in my opinion, Ellie and Abby were the more deserving of all of them, except for I never played Hades. Miles, no. Jen, no. So it was three people out of there, and I'm okay with one of those two getting the performance nod.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change my opinion on direction. Shouldn't have got it. I mean, they scored the art direction, which was which should have been a shoe in regards to anything. It should have been that. I think score and music, obviously Final Fantasy won for a reason. I think they always do a really good job there. Um, and the only one I'm really disappointed in is game direction. They shouldn't have won that. That's the only one I'm disappointed in. I don't even care about game of the year, because at the end of the day, I knew they was gonna give it to the game that really the critics enjoyed, but I think the critics really got it wrong when it came to game direction. And that's why I was kind of bringing up the point of, do we care about what critics think? Because regardless of what I read or what the internet said, I enjoyed Last of Us Part 2 to a degree. It wasn't a smash, it wasn't a total flop. It was just right there in the middle. Um, and I still had enjoyment from the game enough to want to replay some of it and replay some scenes because I thought they were impactful. Um, but to the same point of what a critic might think, they would give it a 10 out of 10. Obviously they were nominated for multiple game awards and things like that. Um, what do you guys think about critics and what their job is in general, and like critiquing artists and their life's work, really, like to write off something so completely fast? What do you think about that?
I don't know. Like, I feel like art is one of them things. Like, it's just hard to critique. I feel like it's what did I say? Like, beauty is to the eye of the beholder or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you always got that little. It's not really a meme, but it's like a running gag. You'll see a red dot on the screen. They like, I just see a burning sun ready to cause chaos. Like, you see all this type of stuff. You like, why just see a red dot? Like, y'all want X amount of dollars for this. But I don't know. Like, I feel like there's hard standards that needs to be met when making a video game. But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, so hard standards would be like, okay, we playing this kind of music. Like a prime example with Dragon Quest 11, they talk about the music in the game. All right, well, the music is this and that. The music sounds, oh, okay, we can say for the most part, it objectively sounds old. Like, that's fair. It needs to be more up to date. Okay, that's cool. Um, but when you got other things like, it can be something like the character being bland is for you to take your eye off the character and delve into you know what I'm saying? It
The
start getting
world
real
more.
abstract.
Yeah, so it's kind of
Like,
like they want to pull you away from something so you can focus on others, type of deal.
yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
like, and this going off of like video games, but this going to like a show. Like a prime example, like I'm in the Black Untold story of Dragon Ball and like Afro Sense. So there's a bunch of black people in here talking about anime and Dragon Ball Z.
Mm-hmm.
People say every now and again Hunter x Hunter gets brought up. People love Hunter x Hunter. Love it. They say it's one of the top 5 animes, top 3 best anime ever, all this type of stuff. And I can't see why. Like, I understand where people be like, well, the point of the show is to show that the main character. This is one of the things I heard. The point of the show is to show that the main character doesn't influence the show, and the character. It shows how irrelevant the main character is to the world that's going on around him, and that part of it, because a lot of shows they focus on the main character. I mean, they focus on dude too, but it's like one of the biggest things with animes is power ups, transformations, power ups, getting stronger, training. He does some of that to some capacity, but he don't change that much. He had this one burst towards the end of the show or whatever, but it don't. I don't know. It just ain't resonate with me. I got tired of getting whooped. Like, it was just stuff like that. Like, and I couldn't. Basically, what I'm saying is, I feel like my standards and other people's standards are like different, and to that same statement, that's the same thing with the critics. They might just be a little bit more seasoned and have a better objective view, and getting paid off a little bit, but a better objective view because they've seen so much and different things like that. But I feel like critics is hard. So with that being said, I know it's kind of long with it. I look at what people say about the game and why they said this and why they said that. And I don't really read critic reviews. I usually read reader reviews because I feel like those give me a better grasp on what's going on. Somebody who doesn't have as much experience, somebody who's more down to earth. Because I played a lot of games that was 6s and 7s and stuff, and I enjoyed them thoroughly. And I'd play games like The Last of Us at 10, and I was just like, okay, it was cool. Like, playing it the first time. Would I play it again? No. Was the formula again dried out? Yes. Like, I'm not finna go play a Last of Us because I don't feel like walking through an area, scavenging, then go see some. Hey, I think they went over here. Bunch of dudes run out, and then my first thing my dude do is go run behind a barricade. I'm not finna do that again. I don't know if they did it in the second one, but I'm not finna do that. I've seen it too much in Uncharted. I've seen it too much in The Last of Us. I'm not finna do that formula again because the story is good, but I'm not finna waste my time trying to see the story by shooting these dudes, and now I got to fight some armored dudes now. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they kind of try to switch it up by letting you sneak past a lot of stuff, but and you can like get to different areas and you can lock doors and you don't have to like no longer do it, but it's really the same, dude. It's legit the same. They let you go prone. That's probably the biggest difference now.
You can
That's
go
legit
prone
the
now.
biggest difference. You can go prone and you can hide in tall grass. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm not. I don't want to say that people are, that people overhype things or people, create a narrative in their own mind.
Say it.
Um,
They do.
Well,
no, I'm not. I'm saying that
kind of.
because I don't want to, because people can have the right to do that. I just feel like when we talk about critics, this is one person's opinion that's supposed to be graduated to be able to tell their opinion in a better way than us. That's it. They can talk to their opinion better than we can because they graduated with a journalist degree. That's all they are. So one person's opinion, deteriorating or like either uplifting or downgrading a game, and I'm expected to take that opinion and trust it because this individual, like their likeness should be very similar to mine. What they like, I should like. That doesn't make any sense
Well,
because we all don't like the same thing. So I think there's this thing about critics that I really just stopped caring about what they say. Um, I can see if something was like doo doo water, and I understood it was gonna be doo doo water, and I'm like, maybe I should look up what people thought about this so I don't waste my time. But to put a lot of stock into it, allow these critics to kind of dictate what is the best games that came out. It's hard to do because it's just like that's their opinion. It's a small group of people that's opinion.
well, it's always going to be an opinion, but I think a a journalistic opinion versus a critique are very different. And the issue that I think a lot of people have with reviews are is that they're not, in I would say in a true sense, critiques. Because I've had critiques in class for like my art or my project or things like that. And a critique, it really should be like, yeah, part praise, like you did this great, and the way that you implemented this is good, but also constructive criticism where if there's something I didn't do well, you are able to articulate
Why
why it's not done well and how it can be done
done
better.
better, but they don't do that. They
Whereas,
just
yeah, whereas like you'll read a review and they'll say like Cyberpunk, uh, like I've seen it, like Keanu Reeves did a bad job or he was miscast. They probably should have picked like someone better. And like I can understand that. Like he's like you don't like Keanu Reeves' acting, but you also are missing the point of why he is in that role because that type of character that he plays is the like that type of character like it's a typecast. Like
yeah,
that role is supposed to be that way. He's supposed to be like weird or awkward because that's the
brash.
type of
Yeah,
yeah, that's the role that he plays. That's why they chose him. So if they wanted somebody who, had a different aura or personality about them, then they would pick someone who fit that.
and they
But he
should
fits that
state
role
that
perfectly.
right.
So you can say like you didn't enjoy it personally, but I think that not by acknowledging its purpose, it can become confusing to people because like they say like they didn't like it, and then you'll play it and you're like, oh, I loved it. So like, what what's the difference between our two opinions?
Right.
Um, yeah, same thing. Like we might talk about like movies. Like there are people that said that the last Harley Quinn movie was trash, and I
Mm-hmm.
saw it. Like I enjoyed it a lot. I didn't really like it's not perfect, but I enjoyed it a lot, and I think that's something that well, two things that critics have to get better at critiquing and not just throwing opinions out there with like
I think it's all the
nothing to
clickbait
back it up.
now. I think it's kind of like people are
Yeah,
looking to get more people onto their sites and whatever, so they start to lose their journalistic. Because I don't remember it being so weird before. Like everything had to be involved with something else. I just felt like people would just give opinion on a game. That's why I watch AC. That's why I be listening to ACG a lot because he just
Mm-hmm.
He has an opinion. Sometimes I don't agree with it, but he honest about it. It's not like it's ever
Yeah.
gonna change. Uh, but with these other people, I just feel like their opinions change too much for me. Like they had liked something that they hated in another game, but they had like it in this game. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I feel about people, and I'd be like, y'all not telling the truth all the time, and it's like
Yeah.
it feels weird, and I guess I'm just over critics because they never get comedy right. Period. So every time I watch a comedy movie, I'm not going to a critic to tell me what I find
Yeah.
subjectively funny because they don't know. So I have to always go watch the movie if I feel if it piques my interest enough. I'm going to watch it. Never go. That's a opinion for life, people. Don't go to a critic about
And one
comedy.
thing I do
Subjective.
want to say is about critique is that reviewers get wrong all the time is a lot of people like to say like a fresh opinion should be like a fair critique. So if you've never played a JRPG, your
Hmm.
review should be treated equally as other reviews. And like, yeah, your opinion should have its same value, but that critique is not experienced enough to give a good
Yeah,
like
you shouldn't.
a good like review on it. Like you see all the time, like I'm reviewing Kingdom Hearts 3, but I never played a JRPG. Like,
Why
so
are you
why are
reviewing it?
you reviewing it? It
Yeah,
should be someone familiar with the genre. I'm not saying that it has to be a fan of Kingdom Hearts,
right.
but someone who can at least compare and contrast it with its contemporaries to give a clear view of what this experience is.
Yeah, they
And you see that all the
sometimes.
time with reviews.
Yeah, they give it. They give these writers or these journalists like different topics to talk about when they don't know much about said topics. It's kind of like going to GameStop and trying to ask them for some advice on a game they know nothing about because they're not going to be the jack of all trades. They're never going to be. So there's no way of GameStop ever giving you viable information unless they are very familiar with that game. And most of the time they're not because there's so many games out there. So I would never want someone to be in that position to try to. That's why I don't give much stock to people because I'd be like, you cannot be this good at everything. You cannot be this well versed in everything. So when you are talking about video games and you're talking about how stuff should work and how stuff should look, I never will be the person that says, "Oh, I know how Final Fantasy games work. I know how they look. I know how they should react." I'm like, I don't know. That's why I don't talk about them. When I say y'all should probably take the helm on this, is for a reason because I don't know, and people just try to take that and run with it, where they like, okay, I played enough of this, so I can kind of critique it now, or
Yeah.
I've done this enough so I can critique it now. Like I put in 20 hours, I can do this now. Like no, you can't really because you don't know all the game, and it's hard to do this, and it's going to continue to get harder and harder as these games get more expansive and expansive. So where do we draw the line of how much we actually care about what they're saying? And that's where I want to get to because I have already come to that agreement that I don't care about what nobody thinks at this point. I really don't. If I want to play the
Yeah.
game, I'm going to play it. Only thing I'm looking for in reviews now is performance, and that's why I only follow Digital Foundry, and I take opinion from Skill Up and ACG from time to time. But that's really it. I don't really talk.
Mhm.
I don't really take anybody else's opinion into consideration, because I don't care at this point.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, for me, I still always buy the game based on my opinion.
mhm,
Unless the game just has bad performance or something, I'm not gonna get it, or wait or something.
right,
But if they're like the game is okay or something, it's still gonna, I feel like, should be on the buyer to make that decision because
right,
like you might just still enjoy it. There've been a lot of times that ACG doesn't like a game or doesn't think it's done well,
right,
but at least I value his explanation of it, so I can see his point of view. Even
right.
though I might not agree with it, I can see where you can come to that conclusion.
Yeah,
But a lot of reviews, like I see, even if it's a positive review, like Gears 5 is the best game Microsoft has ever made from Ryan
stop
McCaffrey. I'm
it,
like, never
stop
mind.
it.
I don't need all that.
I
uh,
don't need it. You we know it ain't. We know. We already
Super
know it's
cat.
not. Stop the
We know
cap.
you get
Stop the cap.
overexcited, Ryan, but
Right, Ryan was talking about they gotta have best games coming soon. It was like they're getting gearing up to finally say that they're going to have nice exclusive. Like that ain't been proven. That ain't been proven.
the Microsoft drought is finally
Yo,
over.
bro, that's what he said. Yeah, I like
Man,
that
he
ain't
off the
been
perkies,
proven.
man.
That ain't been proven. Ryan, you need to simmer down, buddy.
That
I
boy off the
like.
perks.
I don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah, but I think that really I would value my friends or like not YouTubers, but smaller
Mm-hmm.
people who I at least feel like can give a more honest opinion. Because maybe trying to fit everything into an article, they got to cut out a lot of information
Oh
that
yeah.
should be there. Whereas like you can just get like an honest opinion or a long post on Reddit that they go through specific details.
Mm-hmm.
You might get at least a better idea of what's going on instead of like a sensationalized news article or
Yeah, like you need about 30 minutes to give me a good understanding of a game. I say no less. You can't do it in those 6 minutes. You can't do it in those
yeah
5 minutes.
5 minute 10
Yeah,
minute reviews.
no, not happening. My time my ability to I would rather give you more time to explain yourself than to try to you only captivate a little bit of my time today. Like I'd rather give you more time to explain yourself. I prefer that. So if I gotta read 30-minute article, I'll read it. If I gotta watch a 30-minute video, I'll read it. I prefer video format more, but I will read your article to kind of give it better
Yeah,
for you to
all scale
explain.
up videos be an hour, but he
Yeah,
goes into super detail.
about everything about the game, and he tries to make sure he's very thorough. So I appreciate that type of stuff, and I don't appreciate it when people try to, you know, jump on the what will give me the most clicks, or how can I get this out the fastest. Like they give you the game early for a reason. Take the time, sit down, and play it. So I just don't like that type of aspect of it, really. So
Yeah.
I don't really care about them no more. I stopped caring about them a while ago. I listen to a review after I play it, and I see if my opinion kind of correlates with yours, or if it's different, or if what you felt was different, or like I never thought about it that way. That's the only thing I kind of look for now. It's like after I'm done.
That I think that review that was the craziest, especially for it to be a remake, was that 7.8 too much water for
Yeah.
Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby. I was just kind of like, I mean, I don't know what they could have did to destroy this game to take it from a 9 to a 7.8. I mean, that was just like, I was just like, I don't even need to play the game to know that review is wrong. Like, like it just didn't make sense. Like I get what they're saying, but I'm like, the game got a 9 before, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't like too much water is just that was just beyond me, but I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
they felt like the game is newer, so they need to reduce how much water in the game, even though it's a remake or something. I don't know, but that was just it just
I
want to
think
go.
the main thing is like if you look at the review, they talk a lot more about the more recent Pokemon games and compare it to the more recent ones, which I understand. Like it's fair, but if it's a remake, you also have to kind of treat it special because, of course, they didn't have the ability or the whatever to make it better. It was the best that it could be at that time, and so remaking it, they provide that same experience. And for remakes, they're kind of weird because is it better for somebody who never played the original to review it or not? I just think that especially that review, they just focus too much on like the newer games because they keep talking about like Pokemon X, but Sapphire came out like 10 years earlier.
Yeah, it's off the perks.
Yeah, man. But yep, we are at time, people. But yeah, like I said, we got other stuff we want to talk about with you guys, but unfortunately, we have a short amount of time we can. But next time, be 2 more weeks from now. Next month, 2 week Monday, you'll see another episode from us where we kind of try to deep dive. If you guys have any opinions on what you want us to talk about, obviously leave it in the comment section below. This is going to be on YouTube, Spotify, uh, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can listen to a podcast. That's where it'll be. Uh, But yeah, thank you guys for listening. Any last words before we head out, people?
Shoot, just make sure y'all stay safe as always.
Don't stay dangerous. Is that what you? Nah.
Man, that vaccination out, man.
Oh my goodness.
That vaccination.
Man.
Yeah.
That's people in Chicago got to stop going out to parties.
Yep. Next time on House of Wolves podcast, Black people in vaccine.
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing, people. All right.